Hi, everyone. It's Adam Glass here with Advanced 2000. This is the latest episode of Cloud Space. Last time we talked to you was at the beginning of the month. There was getting ready for the New York City Build Show, one of the first trade shows to come back since in the last 2 years. It was an outstanding show. I got to be on a panel with a bunch of outstanding folks from Woods and Baggett, NK Architects, Gilbane, LaChase Construction, a few other folks, and we had a great talk there. One of the things that we did talk about was collaboration and how architectural engineering construction companies are collaborating today in the new world of things, whether it's being able to take care of remote settings or share documentations or modeling or any types of projects across wide areas, and some of the challenges associated with that, and some of the solutions also associated with that. As akin to that comes the security aspect of it. We touched slightly on it during that question, but I wanted today's focus of Cloud Space to be on that security and some of the challenges that we have out here. To help me with that, I've got Andrew Tamchyna from Advanced 2000 here with with us. Andrew is one of our subject matter experts. He is a what we call a solutions architect here, and both cloud and how security relates to that is one of his areas of expertise. But I'll go ahead and, Andrew, go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So yeah, hi everybody. My name is Andrew. I've been with Advanced 2000 for actually coming on 10 years now. So it's been a good long run here. And yeah, my focus is over the years has been, primarily on kind of more of the technical aspects of some of the solutions that we put together for clients and customers, which we're seeing more and more these days are very security focused and security oriented. So yeah, a lot of changes in that space in the last couple of years, and definitely have been a big focus on a lot of the solutions we've been putting together for our customers.
So on that, I've just shared my screen here, and you can see up here a Word document I've just posted. And this is the Advanced 2000 recommended security posture. There's a lot of things in here that we can get into very in-depth conversations about. So what I've asked Andrew to do is to pick a few things that are of really particular interest that are going on right now and things that he's going to comment on. All of these have to do with whether your company has, or at least you think you have the best security posture out there in the world, or that something is keeping you up at night. You're not completely sure. These are all things that you need to be asking yourself. And that's whether you've got still a premise-based type of infrastructure, or if you've got a cloud infrastructure, or like most people, you've got a hybrid infrastructure where you've got some premise-based equipment, you've got some cloud types of services, you may have some data backup in cloud services or in remote areas, whatever that case may be. These items here are of extreme importance. So let's talk a little bit about that. Where do you want to start, Andrew?
Yeah, so I think, really just framing the document a little bit, right? So we've kind of put this together to use as kind of a framework for a lot of our customers to really look back at, how they're set up as an organization, regardless of what they're doing with their IT, to help protect them against, the latest and greatest threats that are out there in the environment. And you'll note kind of, as we kind of go through some of these, right, there's really a dual focus here, and there is the proactive or the preventative, features or aspects of security that are obviously super important, but then there's obviously the reactive ones. And those are we find to be, equally, if not to some extent, more important, because you can never really, there's no such thing as 100% secure environment, right? It is not possible. And so I think maybe a good place to start, Adam, and we could just, kind of briefly touch on this, is the backups, right? So, the idea is you can do everything you want to be able to do, and we'll dive into a lot of these things with respect to preventing getting, some sort of a vulnerability exposure. But if and when that does happen, and it's inevitable in a lot of situations, you want to make sure that you can recover as quickly as possible, right? So, for that reason, we have always, I mean, and it's been doubly reinforced over the last little while. We've always kind of focused on backup as a key component to a company's security posture, right? So, and that includes, making sure that your backups are resilient, right? To the point where they're potentially not even accessible to your actual network, right? So we recommend offline backups, and that could be everything from, an unmutable copy that gets pushed to a cloud service provider somewhere, all the way down to like physical tapes or hard drives that get removed from systems and put into a storage locker or something like that, right? Because these days, especially with, targeted attacks or credential compromise where an attacker gets on the network, the first thing they're looking for is they're looking for where the backups are, and they're looking to compromise those before they do any more damage, because they know once your backups have been compromised, the damage is going to be much more impactful.
So you're saying almost as importantly as setting up a good perimeter, setting that great posture up so that you can resist those types of attacks, also having something there so when the attack does happen, right? So you have to go under the assumption that it could very well happen. What are you going to do? Where is that data? Is that data separated, completely, segregated from any potential, malcontent that might go on there, right? So it's not just a matter of setting up the force field, but you now have to have some place to be able to retreat to in case that force field is breached, right?
Well, that's exactly why I thought it's a good place to start, because it has to be there. It has to be in place, because no matter what else you do, if you have no way of helping yourself get back to a functional state after some compromise of whatever nature has occurred, that's the worst case scenario, essentially, So, obviously we don't need to hover too much time on that. There's a whole bunch of, great technologies out there to really ensure that you're able to deliver, or that you are protected sufficiently from a backup standpoint, and that's something that we, that's what we help a lot of our clients and customers with identifying and implementing. But, like I said, I thought it was a great place to start. Now, maybe flipping the coin here and now looking at more of the proactive side of things, right? Just briefly highlighting some of the obvious ones, the ones that have been out on the market for years, but still equally, valid, are things like your endpoint protection, right? So got to have your devices protected with some sort of AV, anti-malware, and these days, more advanced services, right? So the big term, I guess, these days is EDR, right? And that specifically focuses on not your traditional, viruses, things that are fingerprinted, things that are malicious, known malicious, right? Viruses, malware, so on and so forth. Attacks are much more complicated these days. So the focal point is now on even like identifying strange anomalies within your environments and within your systems. A great example, actually, I was talking to our CEO the other day, and he had a really nice example of one of these situations. Is like, let's say Adam is drives to work every single morning, right? We know exactly where he goes. And then one morning, Adam decides to drive the opposite way out of his driveway, right? That's a very strange situation. Why does that happen? These are the kinds of things that there may be nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's worth investigating in some cases, right? So a great example, from a technical standpoint is, this server has been doing this or serving this same function for forever. And now all of a sudden today, it started running this PowerShell script or this applet, right? So there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, PowerShell is built into Windows. It is used for a lot of different, features and use cases and environments, but it's worth looking into why all of a sudden that server is doing something it doesn't usually do, right? So, there are great advancements in the endpoint protection technologies these days as well that can help to prevent these types of compromises, right? So
what are some of the things that we're doing, Advanced 2000, as far as endpoint protection for our cloud customers, I should say?
Yeah, so first and foremost, right, it's having the right software, the right technology in place, right? So that includes things like a good AV client, right? So we're a big proponent of the Sophos platform, right? Their InterceptX Advance is really good, and they have some great feature sets built on top of that. And then in addition to that, it's the labor component, the labor aspect, right? It's the keeping on top of the monitoring and the management of that infrastructure, right? Of the Sophos, looking at those alerts, right? Because, the technology is as good as the users using it to some extent, and it can automate things to a certain degree, but sometimes there's just things that you need to be on top of and you need to be seeing.
Right, right. So you had mentioned the story about our CEO, or the anecdote that our CEO used the other day for describing some of this. And that reminds me of really something that would be one of the other bullets I think that we would highlight, and that's email security. Just the other day, or yesterday, actually, I got an email that looked that it came from our CEO. And in there, it asked him to verify some information for me because he had a special task for me. And there was a signature below it with his name and CEO and all that other kind of stuff there. Well, I've known our CEO for very many years, and I know how he talks. And so I was like, this isn't from our CEO. But that was a phishing attempt. That was an attempt to go in through our corporate email there and use something that I would think was benign and part of my normal job to reply to and say, oh, yeah, he needs that information. Of course, I got to get that to him right away. And I think most of the time, and at least what we're seeing, is this is the entry point, one of the main entry points for a lot of people doing bad things out there with malware and what have you. Is that email point there? Talk a little bit about that, if you won't mind.
Yeah. No, so you're right. Truth be told, right, I would say that is arguably probably the most popular threat vector these days, and that is email, right? Because, and especially, right, so first and foremost, right, email spam filters or some of the email security platforms out there aren't necessarily the greatest at identifying messages that may very well be completely legitimate in the way that they've been formulated, right? So that's kind of one of the trickier things. I mean, it goes back to that point of even some of the virus stuff is, some of these phishing emails or even some malicious emails, right? They come from completely legitimate sources, right? Someone decides they want to spoof or spam a particular company. They can go and buy a domain totally legitimately that looks very much like your domain, right? They can go and register it with an email service, and they can create an email box and send it to you, right? A normal mail system is not going to know, oh, hold on, this domain is really close to what your domain looks like, right? So I'm going to, flag it. But there are some great platforms out there that do take it to that next level, right? So one of the big ones we use, and again, not to, plug any products here in particular, but, so Barracuda has a really nice platform called Sentinel. And Sentinel is AI based. It only integrates with Office 365 right now, but it's because it is designed to learn and understand how the users write and compose and who they receive emails from. And all of this information gets kind of pooled together, and it makes decisions based off of that. So if it does notice an email that's coming from what looks like the name of the CEO and even has the CEO's signature, for example, because maybe that person, had an email from the CEO at some point, they used just copied and pasted the contents of it. They'll put a little banner at the top says, this email says it's coming from so-and-so, but it's not coming from an email address that so-and-so usually emails you from, right? So it can really help, prevent some of those potential exploits that otherwise no technology system is capable of, because it's not necessarily malicious, right? I mean, the method through which that email came in is completely legitimate. Otherwise, if a system was blocking stuff like that, it would block totally legitimate emails as well for weird anomalies like this, So
it's using artificial intelligence actually to be able to go in and do that kind of job there. And just to go back to the comment that you made, as far as not to push a particular product, but really that's part of the responsibility of a good IT provider, right? And so we provide IT services to thousands of companies, and there's lots of companies out there like us that we don't necessarily focus on any one manufacturer, because we just mentioned 2, or maybe 3 if we mentioned Microsoft, different types of companies that we employ their software, but we're using best of breed, right? Because we've tested each one of these. We've put them to the task. We've had them in both beta and real world environments, and we know what works. And so we put Sophos where Sophos is best. We put Barracuda where Barracuda is best, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, that's important when people are out there looking for that type of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that it goes back to, or can kind of segue back, is, once that type of infiltration has been made on email, right? And that can happen because that's our weakest link, right? Our employees, not the software or the hardware that we try to set up that posture with, but it's people that make a mistake sometimes, right? Just aren't thinking when they open something up. It goes back to that point that you made about backing things up, right? Yeah. So when those mistakes are made, you have some place to go, right?
Yeah, I think so. And funnily enough, right? So the exposure there, at least from an email security standpoint these days, is in fact not the technology, but the people, right? And so that's where you'll notice actually a number of our security posture points hit on is helping the people essentially, right? Whether it's providing them with tools to educate themselves or putting in mechanisms to help, protect against users who cause the compromise, right? So a couple points I want to highlight. First is, so we talked a little bit about phishing and having technology in place to potentially or help educate the users, right? Another thing to ensure you have in place is just a good training program around things like phishing, right, for your end users. And that can come with things like doing phishing campaign, fake phishing campaigns, for example, right? So another service that we're offering to our clients and customers is exactly that, where we generate fake phishing campaigns that can be very custom and specific to your organization, can be custom to things like, the season, right? So like a tax spam or tax phishing attempt, or even, very targeted to your industries, for example, and then push them out to your client, your user base, and track metrics on who clicked the link, who responded, who, put their username and password into the web portal, right? All those bad things, and enforce an immediate, hey, you did something wrong. Watch this, 2-minute video to help identify this in the future so that it doesn't happen again,
Well, that brings us to another good point. So one of the other things that Advanced 2000 has put out there recently, and this is really much more important now with everything that's going on in the world. Anybody that's turned on the news or looked at all, there's a lot of really bad threats going on out there. There's lots of threats coming from foreign state actors. And this is real stuff. This isn't just, saber rattling or people feeling like there's conspiracies out there. In the IT world, we've been under attack for quite some time now, and that's only been getting geared up more and more. And so what we have now is a service that's called our Cybersecurity Assessment. This is available to both existing Advanced 2000 customers as well as anybody out there that's not. And this is why don't we talk a little bit about it? So Andrew, tell us a little bit about it, if you could, about the Cybersecurity Assessment.
Yeah. So in essence, right, I mean, this kind of goes back to the ever evolving threat landscape, right? And that is that the technology that you use in your office is just changing every single day, right? Whether it's a software update or a new feature that gets deployed for your, ERP system or your accounting software, or even a new piece of hardware, right? You got a brand new laptop for a new user running a new operating system, right? All these things are constantly changing, right? Vendors are pushing out new updates and features. And truth be told, every time something changes, there is a new potential for a new vulnerability, right? So,
I mean, for instance, we were talking about the hybrid environments before. So you've got a lot of companies that aren't just dealing with their own protected environment, but they're reaching out to other services, cloud services that they depend upon for different types of tools that they use to, create a building, to run a construction project. Every time you go and open that hole, that's a potential area for something bad to get in, right?
Yeah. So obviously, in addition to, trying to keep up with all the patches and, keeping on top of all of the vulnerabilities identified and the message boards out there, right? I mean, it's arguably impossible, right, for, a IT vendor, your IT people, whomever, to make sure that they're looking in every nook and cranny all the time, right? So for that reason, we feel it's very important to, have a regularly performed, essentially a vulnerability scan, right? In our case, it's a subset of what we do as part of our cybersecurity assessment, but it includes the industry standard tools to essentially take a look at every single asset on your network and identify its currently existing vulnerabilities, right? And oftentimes I would say 99 times out of 100, it's just something that's missing a latest update. You know what I mean? Or it's some piece of equipment that just, is end of life and is no longer getting any support from the manufacturer, right? I mean, it's things like that ultimately are when a malicious actor gets access to your, corporate environment, the first thing they do is exactly that, is scan the network and try to find something that is vulnerable. And then their next step is, how do we expose that?
I mean, let's be honest with you. Running a business is 90%, if not more, risk mitigation. Is making sure that you're able to do whatever it is that company focuses on and not have any unforeseen types of things interrupt that from happening. This type of a service here, and it's a very, very low-cost service, we'll get into that in a second, but it closes that out. It at least allows people to be able to sleep at night knowing that they were able to have their entire network scanned, looked at for vulnerabilities, but not just scanned and looked at for vulnerabilities, but also be able to give you a rating on those vulnerabilities, what's critical, what's not so critical, and then a remedy to be able to address each one of those, right? How do you close these holes? What holes need to be closed? What holes might you need to be opened, or whatever the case may be. But that way, at least there's no lying in bed saying, wait, I think I'm protected. My IT guy told me I'm protected, but am I really protected, right? Yeah. So this is something that we're doing now. It's a service for, it's only $1,500. We go ahead and we can get into the details with it if it's something that you're interested in. But we go ahead and run this scan. And then once the scan is done, or it's actually several scans, we then provide you with our findings and then a remediation type of task to be able to go after that. Anything you want to comment on there, Andrew?
No, just that, as we kind of alluded to in the beginning, right, the landscape is ever evolving. So it is something we're also recommending to our customers to have done at some regularity, right? So, this might be an engagement you run once a year, maybe semi-annually, maybe quarterly. Again, it all depends on your ability to handle risk and where
tolerance level.
Exactly, tolerance
level. Your
yep.
tolerance level, right? And so, and for those types of people that want to be able to run it on a regular basis, we do have a sliding scale when it comes to cost. If it's something you want to do, whether it be twice a year or 4 times a year or once a month or whatever the case may be, we do have different types of arrangements for those things. So that's it. I think we've covered a lot today. We're going to schedule another cloud space, and we're going to cover a couple other security items in the next one. But I think that's it. Andrew, anything else you want to comment on before we go ahead and log off?
No, look forward to having another conversation with you soon, Adam.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Cloud Space, and we're going to talk to you real soon. Have a great day and be safe out there. Take care.